بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من سيئات أعمالنا. من يضلل الله فلا هادي له ومن يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، عن أبي عبد الله خباب بن الأرد رضي الله عنه قال: شكونا إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو متوسد بردة له في ظل الكعبة، فقلنا: ألا تستنصروا لنا، ألا تدعوا لنا؟ فقال: قد كان من قبلكم يؤخذ الرجل فيحفر له في الأرض فيجعل فيها، فيجاء بالمنشار فيوضع على رأسه فيجعل نصفين، ويمشط بأمشاط الحديد ما دون لحمه وعظمه وما يصده ذلك عن دينه. والله لا يتمن هذا الأمر حتى يسير الراكب من صنعاء إلى حضرموت لا يخاف إلا الله والذئب على غنمهم، ولكنكم تستعجلون. وفي رواية: وهو متوسد بردة وقد لقينا من المشركين شدة، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام: رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي، رب زدني علما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. Hadith number 17 under the chapter of Sabr, narrated by Hazrat Abu Abdullah Khabbab bin al-Arat radiyallahu anhu. Inshallah, today we'll just discuss briefly about who Hazrat Khabbab radiyallahu anhu is. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a market, there was a place known as Suq al-Uqad, where many incidents and instances from the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took place. Now, at the time where the slaves were sold, among the slaves that were sold, there was a young child, and he's not even a teenager yet, and a woman by the name of Anmar al-Khuzaiya. She is going around the market looking for somebody who can help her, assist her, do the housework at home, and also whatever she needs, she can train him up as well, and the money that she has, invest using in that money as well, in that business. So while she's looking around, she spots this young child. She purchases this child, and while she's leaving the marketplace, a discussion takes place. She asks this child that, what is your name? So the child replies, my name is Khabbab. The father's name, Al-Arat. Which town and which tribe you're from? So he replies, I'm from the tribe of Najd. And Najd is one of the Arabian tribe. So Khabbab radiallahu anhu was dark in color. So she thought that he must be from outside Arabia, Abyssinia, Habashi. So she was shocked that how a child who is dark in color and is from one of the Arab tribes. So she asked her, which tribe you're from? So he said, I'm from the Najd, and also from the family of Banu Tamim. So she asked him that, look, how did he end up here? That how did he end up into the marketplace of Makkatul Mukarramah? So he replied that there was a tribal war. So between two tribes there was a war, and our tribe lost that war and battle. The men were killed, the women were also enslaved and were captured, and the children were also taken, and I was also one of them. And we were brought here, and we were sold here as a child. So Anmar, this is how she purchased Hadith Khabbab radiallahu anhu. She trained him to be a blacksmith, and especially in craft and making swords. So he became very skilled and trained in how to make swords and became an expert in this. So what he would do is that he would make swords and sell them, and whatever money that he would earn would be given to his master again. So he would do all the hard work and all the difficulty going into the marketplaces and selling and etc. And all that money will be given to his master, Anmar. So now this is how he became famous inside the marketplaces of Makkatul Mukarramah as well. So from young age, he's lived as a slave and he's done slavery work. Now, whilst he was there, he heard the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made sense to him. He never worshipped any idol. He didn't think of any idol. He didn't comprehend, it wouldn't make sense to him. So he was away from idol worshipping. So the message of oneness of Rasulullah, oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he heard it, it made sense to him. So soon, later, he found a chance to go into the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and ask few questions. And in that gathering, he accepted Islam. He became in the folds of Islam and became a believer. Now, the master, Anmar, she found out that her slave has left the religion and has accepted the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So she sent her brother Siba'a to investigate. So he came with a couple of youngsters and to the house to where Khabbab radiallahu anhu was and asked few questions. And they asked him that, have you left the religion? Have you left your religion? So Khabbab radiallahu anhu replied that, I have not left any religion. I have not left any religion, meaning he didn't have any religion. He wasn't worshipping any idols. So he didn't have any religion. What he was on was already on Tawheed. So he said that I have not left any religion. And he replied that, look, I believe in one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I believe in the message brought to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now in the Sahaba radiallahu anhu majma'in, the Khabbab radiallahu anhu comes in the top 10, earlier 10. The earlier 10 who accepted Islam. So it comes around the number 6 or number 7 who accepted Islam. And not only that, he is one of the first one to express his Islam openly. Publicize his Islam and his belief and his faith, and he's one of the first ones to be tortured because he openly claimed to be a believer and to accept the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From then, he was only around the age of 16, 17 at that time. He was only around the age of 16 and 17, and he accepted Islam and he openly proclaimed his Islam. And from then he was being tortured and all types of difficulties that he went through. And he explains later on that they used to beat him so much that he fell unconscious. And they would beat him with iron bars, metal bars, on his head, on his body, wherever possible. And they would lay him down into the hot sand of Makkatul Mukarramah in the middle of the day. And he would become unconscious and he will, wounds, all sorts of things. And then he would be put over a fire. And the fire will be extinguished by the fluid and the pus that would be coming out from his back. And this is how he was given trouble and torture. And just thinking about the types of torture that he went through into detail, it makes our mind such that we won't be able to cope and comprehend, and we will be able to bear ourselves how much taklif that Khabbab radiallahu anhu went through. And this was he was among those few. Bilal radiallahu anhu also went through such similar torture, and the Khabbab radiallahu anhu also went through torture, just because they had accepted the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and accepted the Tawheed and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Later on, the Khabbab radiallahu anhu lived in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and also in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. He also lived in the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. A very long life Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. Once in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he was sat in the gathering, and Umar radiallahu anhu asked Khabbab radiallahu anhu. This was when Islam had spread and there was peace around. So the Khabbab radiallahu anhu was asked by Umar radiallahu anhu that, oh Umar, the torture that you went through, the difficulty that you went through, explain that to us. Explain what torture that you went through. So Khabbab radiallahu anhu, he lifted his garment and he showed them the back of to Umar radiallahu anhu. And Umar radiallahu anhu said that I've seen torture, I've seen punishment, but I've never ever seen any person's back like this. There was no flesh left on his back, it was just bones. That's all he was. He said, Umar radiallahu anhu said, I've never ever seen anybody, I've never seen such torture like this. So this was Khabbab radiallahu anhu. And Khabbab radiallahu anhu also, he plays a role in the acceptance of the Islam of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. If you remember, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, before accepting Islam, there was a time that where he came out of his home with a sword in his hand, ready to finish Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam off. And on the way, he met a Sahabi and who asked that, where are you going? And he said that I'm going to finish off Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the story ends here. So the person told him that, look, why don't you take care of your own family members? Now, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu had a sister by the name of Fatima. Fatima, the daughter of Khattab radiallahu anha. And she was married to Sa'id ibn Zayd ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. So he heard the news that his sister had accepted Islam. So instead of going to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took his direction towards the home of his sister Fatima radiallahu anha. When he came close to the home, she realized that this is the knock of Umar radiallahu anhu. So he came in and there was a conversation that took place, and Umar radiallahu anhu, out of anger, also hurt his own sister, the Fatima radiallahu anhu. After the whole atmosphere settled, Umar radiallahu anhu said that, look, what were you reading? What were you reading? Bring what you were reading. And when the few verses of Surah Taha were brought in front of Umar radiallahu anhu, at that time, there was a third Sahabi in that home. So there was Fatima radiallahu anhu, her husband Sa'id ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, and behind the curtain was Hazrat Khabbab ibn al-Arat radiallahu anhu, who had come to teach the Quran to these two. So before the arrival of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, Khabbab radiallahu anhu went to behind the curtains and he hid. So when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu sat down and wanted to know what they were reading, Khabbab radiallahu anhu came out of the hiding place and he said that, oh Umar, glad tidings for you, glad tidings for you. I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua that, oh Allah, from the two Umars, whoever is more beloved to you, make him strengthen Islam through him. Umar bin Hisham and Umar bin al-Khattab. Umar bin al-Khattab is Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, and Umar bin Hisham is Abu Jahl. So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua that from these two, whoever is more beloved to you, make him a means of strengthening of Islam. So Khabbab radiallahu anhu said that it is possible the dua is being accepted on in your favor. So from this, Umar radiallahu anhu went to Zayd bin Arqam radiallahu anhu's house, where he accepted Islam in the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Khabbab radiallahu anhu plays a great role in the acceptance of Umar radiallahu anhu as well. Now Khabbab bin Arat radiallahu anhu, as you mentioned, he lived through the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he took part in every battle the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took place. And then later on in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu he lived, and also in the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. Now in the time of Ali radiallahu anhu, when the battle of Siffin took place, when he was returning, at that time, Khabbab radiallahu anhu, by that time he had migrated to Kufa. And when the battle of Siffin was over, Ali radiallahu anhu came to Kufa, and that was around that time where Khabbab radiallahu anhu also passed away. Khabbab radiallahu anhu passed away around the age of 71, 72. This was about 37 years after the migration. So Ali radiallahu anhu, in one narration, says that he was present in the janazah of Khabbab radiallahu anhu, and he also led the janazah salah of Khabbab radiallahu anhu, and he was one of the first Sahabi to be buried in Kufa. He was one of the first Sahabi to be buried in Kufa. So later on, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, when he was going past the grave of Hazrat Khabbab radiallahu anhu, he praised him, and he said that Rahimallahu Khabbaban, that may Allah have mercy upon Khabbab radiallahu anhu, laqad aslama raghiban. He accepted Islam with full of eagerness and wholeheartedly, wahajara ta'i'an, and he also migrated in obedience, and he came from Makkah to Mukarramah to Medina to Munawwara, wa'asha mujahidan, and he lived a life of mujahada and struggle, wabtuliya fi jismi ahwalan, and in his body there was so much taklif and trouble and suffering that he went through, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't waste any struggle or any amal of ours. So that Ali radiallahu anhu also praised Khabbab radiallahu anhu. So this is the brief understanding of who our narrator Khabbab radiallahu anhu is. Just to summarize, And Khabbab, his name is Khabbab, the father's name is Al-Arat. One of the title that's given is Abu Abdullah, another name is Abu Muhammad, and another name is Abu Yahya. So either Abu Abdullah Khabbab bin Al-Arat, Abu Muhammad Khabbab, or Abu Yahya Khabbab radiallahu anh. Number 6 or number 7 person, Sahabi, to accept Islam. From beginning of his accepting Islam, he went through all types of difficulties and torture, and one of the first one to accept Islam, express his Islam openly. And also he stayed with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He migrated with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He took part in the battles in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He lived in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, and also he played a great role in the acceptance of Umar radiallahu anhu's Islam as well. And then in the time of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, he passed away and migrated to Kufa, and he was one of the first one to be buried in Kufa, passed away around the age of 71, 72, 37 years after Hijrat. So this was brief understanding of who our narrator is. Inshallah, we'll discuss the hadith that he is mentioned here. Just to end the dars today with just a reminder about today is the 2nd of Muharram. 2nd of Muharram 1446. It's important that we, first of all, some of the du'as that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite at the beginning of the new month, or when the moon was sighted, that Allahumma ahillahu alayna bil amni wal iman wal salamati wal islam wa tawfiq lima tuhibbu wa tarda rabbuna wa rabbuka Allah. That reminding ourselves that this new moon that has come, we ask Allah that He makes a means of security for us, He makes a means of faith for us, a means of safety, and a means of us increasing in our Islam, and guidance for us as well. And also at the same time, Rabbuna wa Rabbukallah, we look at the moon and we say that your creator and my creator is Allah. My creator and your creator is Allah. Meaning, we don't worship the moon, we are not idol worshippers, we only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also at the same time, we make dua, وَرِضْوَانِ مِنَ الرَّحْمَنِ وَجِوَارِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ, that we seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also seek the protection from the evil of shaitan. آمنت بالذي خلقك. We make look at the moon and we make dua that I have brought iman onto that being who has created you. Alhamdulillah الذي ذهب بشهر كذا وجاء بشهر كذا. And we ask that, oh Allah, we praise Allah for that month that has gone by and the new month that has begun. So these are certain du'as that we recite at the beginning of the new month. And also Muharram is the beginning of our Islamic calendar. That Umar radiallahu anhu plays a great role in the Islamic calendar as well. In the time of his era, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, he used to have letters to each other. So that Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu said to Umar radiallahu anhu that, look, we receive letters, but there's no years. It's difficult for us to trace back. The months were written, but the years were not there. So then why don't we fix a year? So a couple of opinions were given that why don't we start the Islamic calendar from the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or from the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or from the time that he received the prophethood. But then with the mashwara of the Sahaba, they came to agreement that we should start the Islamic calendar from the hijrat and the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why we have 1446 AH, after the hijrat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So our Islamic calendar is based on the lunar, based on the moon, and the normal calendar that we normally use is based on the sun. So there's a bit of difference. There's 365 days here, there's around 355 days in here, so there's about 10, 11 days less in the Islamic calendar. And this is the reason why every year the Ramadan is coming earlier and earlier. So this month of Muharram that we have is very virtuous, is known as the Shahrullah, the month of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After the month of Ramadan, the best days and the best month to fast is in the month of Muharram. And also, try to pray some tahajjud salah. There's also mention of tahajjud salah in the hadith as well. So try to fast in the month of Muharram as well as much as possible. Try to pray some time, spare some time in the night time in tahajjud salah as well. And in this month, we have the day of Ashura. Briefly, the day of Ashura, we should try to fast 9, 10, and 11. So we're not, copying and imitating the disbelievers, or we fast. So we have, by fasting these 3 days, inshallah, we won't be copying them. And also, the day of Ashura is a time where we have the incident of Karbala that took place as well. The Mawlana Yusuf Muttallah rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that the Shaykh rahmatullahi alayhi gathered his disciples, and when he was sat with his friends, he asked that, what have you done for the martyrs of Karbala? So they were all thinking that what have they done, what have they done. That the Shaykh Rahmatullahi alayhi mentioned that from the beginning of the month of Muharram, every day I've been completing one khatam and sending us the Isal Sawab for those who were martyred in the plain of Karbala. So there are many things that we know we can discuss in the month of Muharram. One thing that we need to mention, that the month of Muharram is a month that it is sacred month. It's a month of a sacred month and month of mercy. It's not just a month where you mourn. Rather, we should look at the positive of it and remember that Umar radiallahu anhu was also actually passed away on the 1st of Muharram. Passed away on the 1st of Muharram. A couple of days before that, he was attacked whilst he was leading Fajr Salah, and on the 1st of Muharram he passed away. So there are many other incidents and other events that took place in the month of Muharram. So we try to fast in this month as much as possible and try to pray Tahajjud Salah. Inshallah, we'll mention a few other points about the Ashura, which is the next Tuesday, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our gathering. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to practice upon what's been heard and what's been mentioned. Allahumma ameen, subhanallah bihamdi. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا رب